Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I am your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversants are Graham Linehan and Cori Cohn. Cori Cohn is previously known as Cohn and is the co-host of the Heterodorx podcast with Nina Paley. Graham Linehan is a seasoned comedy television writer, most notably known for The IT Crowd and Father Ted. These are British sitcoms. In this conversation, we are ostensibly here to promote Genspect's upcoming Bigger Picture Conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico, over the weekend of September 27th and 28th. And I am doing a mini-series interviewing the speakers of that conference. Genspect is a wonderful organization that provides a lot of resources for people who are affected by gender in one way or another. And in this conversation that we do eventually get around to talking about gender, we actually focus on cultural matters, specifically the nature of comedy and how popular comedy has kind of changed over the last 10 years or so with the culture war and hyper-progressivization of media in general. Graham and Cori are great people. You can find links to their works down there in the description, as well as links to support this channel. Without further ado, here is Graham Linehan and Cori Cohn. But Graham, you're in Arizona now?
I am.
Okay.
I'm in Scottsdale.
What's up with all the people moving there? You and Doyle and
Well, me and
Peterson?
Doyle are doing the same thing. We're working with what's his name? Rob Schneider.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, who has had his own cancellation problems, and we just thought we would try and write things that, pretend the last 10 years didn't happen culturally. Just kind of make, laugh about things the way we used to be able to about, again, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's not so much woke, anti-woke as non-woke, if you know what I mean. 'Cause I don't think woke.
You mean just funny?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But also, it's more of a thing about the content. If we go anti-woke is going to be over in a few years, just like woke is. So it'll be like us still doing jokes about bell bottoms in 1980. Mm-hmm. So that's the plan. Anyway, sorry. Let's begin.
Oh, no, that's a good place to begin. What is Perennial in comedy?
Yeah. But sorry, have we started?
Well, you said to start.
Okay. Sorry. I didn't know whether we were. What is Perennial? Is that an actual question then?
Yeah, what's something timeless in the realm of comedy?
Punching down. When people say punching down, they mean anytime anyone talks about punching down, they're gonna then give you a list of all the people they feel superior to. So punching down is a complete irrelevance. And it actually leaves people out of comedy. It says some people are beyond comedy, and so comedy stops reflecting the world. And all those people, they disappear from existence, except to be worshipped and praised and kind of escorted by this terrifying humor section where they might get made fun of. But I don't know. I just think that I want to be an equal opportunities comedy writer, and make fun of people. There's terrible people in all walks of life. There's terrible people in all races, and all. There's terrible men. There's terrible women, and being terrible is a good start to a comedy character. So if you have, for instance, a terrible disabled person, then you got a comedy. But if you have a very nice, accommodating disabled person who's long suffering, then you don't have much. So all this has been incredibly. It has been problematized in England to the most extraordinary extent, where you now see warnings on shows, mine included, that are completely, like mine had a few rude jokes now, but shows like Rising Damp or these kind of beloved British sitcoms or Porridge, they're getting warnings ahead of them. And the thing is, what I find particularly disgraceful and insulting about it is that the warnings kind of throw the original writer under the bus by saying something along the lines of, we must remind people that this was written many, many years ago, and the attitudes in the program do not reflect that type of thing. And but you look at it and you think these attitudes are fine. They're anti-racist, they're anti-sexist normally. The sexist and racist characters are the ones who usually get the rough end of the joke. So, what's the problem? And I think it's part of a wider project to problematize all of Western culture. In the same way that they went after Roald Dahl books and they censored Roald Dahl books. And I met this guy who said he wrote a biography of two actors in the 50s. I can't say which one because he'll be found out. But the sensitivity readers, he said he got a heart attack because of the sensitivity readers, because all the letters between these people would contain words like faggot and so on, and they told him to take it out.
I'm sorry, I can't continue.
Yeah,
after hearing that sort of salty language, Graham.
A salty language.
Yeah. It's funny.
I'm offended.
It is true though that you can say the F word, but if you said the N word, you'd be in deep trouble. So there's more of a protective ring around the N word for some reason. But
it's a magical word.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember Theo Vaughn's brilliant quote? He said he was talking about the N word, and he said when I need to get it out, I just write it down. So, that he's a good example as well of someone who is like, I think of them like crocodiles, like little birds between crocodile teeth, the ones who are picking all the meat out of them. And people like Theo Vaughn and all that Joe Rogan crowd, they're able to kind of go right in the teeth and talk about very sensitive subjects, and you don't come away offended because he's so funny. And he will say these things to the people he's talking about, and they break up, and it just shows how wonderful comedy is. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, I know I've just talked nonstop since I began, but I will give you time for a question in one sec. But the last thing I'll say is that the other thing about this time that I think is so damaging is that one of the things a satire is for noticing. It's like and when everybody is noticing certain things and no one is doing satire about it, then the frustration builds, and you see that in the UK and Ireland at the moment. Everyone is lying, everyone is suppressing the truth. No one is thinking ahead one or two, or even no one is thinking ahead a few months, and so you have a wildly out of control immigration problem, and the media won't talk about it, let alone do satire about it. So there's nowhere for this pent-up steam to go. And for the first time in my life, I saw riots in Dublin. I've never seen riots in Dublin before. That was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. So it's a shame. I mean, that's what 10 years of suppressing the truth has got us. But anyway, let's hear from you guys. So first of all, can I just quickly say before you go on, well done on everything you've been doing. You've made such great strides over there. I've just been so impressed, and I'm really happy, Ben, that you really dived into the anti-detransitioner aspect of things, and I've been so supportive on that. I think it's just been great. So haven't seen you in a while, and I want to say that.
No, it's great to see both of you. And yeah, Graham, there's a whole line of inquiry about writing comedy for the American audience as opposed to the British audience, and like the instance of The Office by Gervais being imported to ABC, and that first season just tanked because it didn't work to have that much of a slime ball in Michael Scott, and then they had to massage it, make it a little bit more optimistic or something like that. It'd be fun or really interesting to see your thoughts on the cultural differences between American and English comedy, and how some of your work probably has leapt the pond and some of it has left leaving the pond. I don't know. But I also want to just open up the floor for Corinna too, but we have time, so there's no rush to get into anything.
Yeah, you can call me Cori if you like too.
Cori.
That's what my mama calls me.
Okay.
Yeah. And Graham, I wanted to say, I feel like if I had made different choices in my life, I too could have been a comedy writer instead of what I am today, which is financially secure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, as to the American versus British thing, I think, I mean, the Office is a very specific example, and it is exactly what they did exactly the right thing. In fact, I got into a big fight with the people who were trying to make an American IT crowd because they wouldn't even countenance my kind of rewritten script, which tried to reimagine it as a sort of Cheers, uh, where it's like the basement is where everyone in the building everyone forgotten in the building congregates. So you have the host guy, and in fact, it was supposed to be a little bit like this at the start, my show, and it just didn't end up that way. Sorry, this is the IT crowd. I don't know if I mentioned that, but what they tried to do was they tried to revert to my original script with all the original lines that were written specifically for the original actors that we'd worked on during the week and changed so that it would suit them. And they just wanted to kind of, I don't know, it was almost like they wanted to dub it onto some new actors. And I was like, no, 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 we can't do this because it's not the same. It's not the same kind of world. I personally think American sitcoms tend to be, especially filmed in front of an audience. Over in the UK, film sitcoms in front of an audience tend to be very surreal, like mine. But in the US, it seems to me that American sitcoms are much more realistic. I mean, not realistic in the sense of, they're very stagey sometimes and the actors talk in gags. But when you get a good one, it feels authentic. Like Cheers felt authentic. Cheers felt like a real bar. Seinfeld felt authentic. They felt like real friends, you know. So I've always associated American comedies with a sort of naturalistic uh, style and also an incredible craft. I don't know whether you noticed, but the guy who designed the Cheers bar ended up getting royalties from the show as a thank you. They actually gave him royalties because
Oh, wow.
the design was so good.
The set was a character.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wanted to make something in that style, and they wouldn't let me. They were just like, no, And finally, I did all this work on a script, and they just nixed all the work and sent over the original. And of course, it didn't work. It never works. It never works when you.
Do you think that without stabbing anybody in the back or losing out on opportunities, was that due to overly cautious nature, like they wanted to play it safe, or unoriginality, or that they were too headstrong to interact with the creative process more directly, like you were proposing?
Well, to be honest with you, I was stupid about it because they sold it to Fox, and I was in my old NPC days, and I was outraged because I'd been going on about Murdoch. And now after the last 10 years, I don't give a damn, and I should have taken the money, but like it was more. I don't know. It's a different attitude towards making stuff. Like you can actually make a pretty good living in the US by producing failed pilots. So you could actually like that would have earned me, I think, something like £100,000 for just that one pilot. It would have been a big payday. Or maybe that was the amount for all the right. Oh, I don't know. I don't know exactly how it works. But anyway, it was a lot of money. And yeah, I just kind of I was in for the long haul. My thing has always been I want to create a show that people love so much that when we end it after a few seasons, as we have to do in the UK, people are like, oh, I used to love that, and they never feel ugh that went on a bit, the way they might about Simpsons and Friends and so on. It's like get in, do a really incredible job, and then make people miss you. But that's not the ethos in the US. The ethos in the US is sign on the dotted line, get the money, and that's fine. But I just didn't play the game, and I didn't really know that was the game. So, more money I could have used to become soluble.
How possibly can you ignore the last 10 years? You did say you're working on, you're trying to wipe the slate clean, come back into creative comedic writing, not woke, not anti-woke, but so much crazy stuff has happened over the last 10 years. COVID, the gender stuff, like
Yes.
on and on and on and on and on, all these social movements and stuff. It's so much material.
Yeah, but what I mean, I may have misphrased it. It's not so much that we're ignoring it; it's that the comedy will just act as if these censors aren't that out there. These lily-livered people. What we're hoping to do is sort of give a way for people to process the last 10 years. I mean, some of the things that have happened. I think it's we talk about it, we complain about it, but we never really talk about how destabilizing it is to have no news source that we can trust. You know, again, as with the kind of rising tensions in the UK and Ireland, you know, there's no way to dispel it because we don't know who's telling the truth. I get into arguments every day on Twitter with Palestine supporters. You know, I support Israel and you know, in general, you know, not specific tactics. But having said that, the overarching tactic of Hamas seems to be to hide beneath their own civilians and create atrocities, so those civilians will be killed. And how did I get into this? I didn't want to get into this. But like the thing is, what we're seeing now is we're seeing a twin tier of information, right? So there are people who believe the Hamas propaganda, and there's people who believe the Israeli propaganda. And we don't know what's propaganda and what's not, because the BBC have had to apologize for publishing 1,500 stories that were untrue about Israel. And the BBC are so heavily invested in the gender stuff that it's really hard to trust them anywhere else. So it's like Matt Taibbi was saying at the Malcolm Gladwell debate. You know, there used to be a time when people would look up to Ed Murrow and feel reassured that they were being told something like the truth, at least, or as much truth as one could know at a certain time. You know, but now there's two things happening. The first is that we just can't trust anyone because we're being lied to so consistently. And the second is that oh shit, what was the second? I did have a second one there, but ready to go. But I think that what that's doing is that when social collapse does rear its ugly head, as I think it has to soon, there's no going to be nowhere to turn to. You know, we're not going to be able to find out what's happening because you know we'll just have our online friends who are telling us whatever we need to know.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly, or whatever we want to hear. But it's really difficult to be a court jester in Wormtongue's court.
Yes,
because there's no authority to mock.
Yes, except the mob. One of the things I like is that the mob is in power, and you know, like what we've seen with a lot of very cowardly comedians is their attempt to not draw the mob their way by not talking about anything that might perk their ears up, you know. So the good thing about that is that we have this open ground that all these other comedians won't go near, you know. And I think that you know that's always great, you know. That's always great. It's like, oh, no one wants this material, you know, it's just lying here. We'll have it, you know. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that answers your question. Sorry, I sometimes lose track of myself.
That's
I
a
might set
wonderful
up a
exploration.
second. I'll put up an otter so that I can remember my conversation as we speak. That's clever, isn't it?
What's an otter?
Otter is a transcription service.
Oh, okay.
I can actually watch the conversation and pull back my thread of thought.
Corinna, what have you been up to? Or Cori, what you been up to?
I just wanted to add on that last topic, though. A couple of years ago, I went and I approached the president of our local NPR affiliate to complain about the news coverage. I used to be a regular monthly contributor to NPR back when it existed before last week, and at least my local affiliate. And I went to him and I said, the coverage is no longer anything I can trust. It's biased. It has a viewpoint that it's trying to communicate. It's not trying to inform me. It's trying to educate me. And his response to me was, yeah, I see the same thing. All of these young people, they don't care about Murrow. They don't care about Brokaw. They don't care about this particular generation of newscaster that we're accustomed to. They all believe in this justice reporting. So they believe that they have the ability to make the world better than it is
Mm.
through telling stories. And they
Yes.
do that through the news media.
Yes.
And what I'm starting to doubt or starting to question is the thing that we thought was normal, which is that we had access to a fairly neutral, fairly unbiased accounting of the day's events. Maybe that was something that only existed between like 1975 and 2000. Maybe that's something that we're accustomed to, but emerged due to certain market forces and disappeared due to market forces.
But you could ask though, I mean, obviously clearly we at that time during that golden period, you might say, like we weren't being told the truth either. We were being lied to, but we just didn't know because there were no camera phones weren't everywhere to correct the record every moment. I think also an interesting thing is that politicians are still living as if that's true. They say things directly contradict themselves and their tweets pop up showing their hypocrisy. So it's like it's a very hard. I would imagine it's very hard to be a journalist. I think the only way you can, but I will say I do think that, like for instance, there's some very good people covering a big trial over here called the Sandy Peggy case. It's not a trial. It's a work tribunal. It's a nurse who was had to share or changing rooms in the NHS Fife with a 6 foot tall trans-identified bloke called Dr. Beth Upton, and it's an extraordinary story here. It's like the BBC is presenting every headline in the following way: Nurse denies bigotry. That's the only way they've been framing it. So what's going to happen is that she's going to win because the case is so crazy and NHS Fife are behaving so bizarrely. She's definitely going to win. And the BBC and the British public, anyone who's trusted the BBC or the Guardian on these issues, they're just going to be completely blindsided. And they're going to say, they're going to ask us, oh, is there a chance for an appeal? When there's no case. You know what I mean? There was no case in the first place. The thing is being run by a bunch of ideologues. In fact, I think the KC which is their barrister, is the mother of a trans child. So it's a nutty thing. But I think there's some journalists who are doing a very good job because they're going to what's that word? First sources, or what's it called? First, the
primary documents, primary
sources, yeah. And they're going to them and they're getting to the truth. And perhaps the good thing about that is that maybe we'll see an end to this kind of cookie cutter journalism, and it'll be replaced by people who actually do get their hands dirty, so to speak. I mean, that might be one of the advantages to living at this time.
That stick, as opposed like the carrot and the stick of bigotry has been over relied upon so much, and it's backed specifically England and Ireland into a corner where they just use that to control the population, and I don't think that it sticks as much.
No,
so when they don't have that lever of control, they don't have any control, and then everything devolves.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we've all found out recently that with people in power who say that men are women and are putting men in women's prisons and destroying women's sports and all that sort of stuff, we've all suddenly realized the same thing. The people who are at the top aren't necessarily there because they're extremely good at what they do. They're just, I mean, politicians seem to be, I can understand following a trend. But when the trend is going to bite your arse as much as this is, when more detransitioners come forward, although plenty have already, yeah, and all that kind of thing. I just don't know. The short-sightedness of it all is extraordinary, And like Lisa Nandy's a good example. She's an MP in the UK, and she was a lot of people were talking about her as a potential prime minister. That's never going to happen now, because she has been filmed saying during some talk that she thinks sex offenders should go in the prison of their choosing. Even when I say
It's
it out
the
loud.
humane thing to do, apparently.
Yeah. How are they going to meet women otherwise? Yeah, it's. I just think that once people realize that there's a vacuum there, that there's no pilot at the controls, they're all just going to rush into the cockpit, you know. And I have to say, I'm beginning to trust my own powers of clairvoyance or whatever you would call it, future telling, more than I used to, because I feel like I spotted the craziness of the trans thing before a lot of other people, certainly a lot of celebrities, and I don't know. I just always had a nose for these things, you know. In fact, story I always tell. I'm really dominating this. I'm so sorry, Cori. But like, there's a story. I went to see Danny Simon, who's Neil Simon's brother, and he gave a piece of advice. He said, when you're writing a sitcom, try and write about the next social trend, whatever it happens to be. You know, he said, because you'll find something in their character that will talk about the modern day, you know? And I thought, wow, what a brilliant piece of advice. The rest of it, I don't really remember. The rest of the comedy course, I don't really remember. But that line has kept me thinking about what's happening, what's going on right now, and what's next,
Yeah.
you know? But I really feel there's going to be some mass civil unrest over the next couple of years, you know?
It reminds me of that Wayne Gretzky quote, "You go where the puck is going to be, not where it is."
Yeah, exactly.
Graham, why is liberal humor so not funny? Why does it suck?
Explain the shit lib, Graham.
But we used to be good at it. We like I say we because I considered myself a liberal for years, you know, until they divorced from me so savagely. But like we used to be good at it. Do you remember the days when conservative humor was a joke? You know, and we had the Onion and we had things like that, and it was all we were all on the same side of good versus evil, you know. And now
Daily Show,
Daily Show,
every night show.
I thought the Daily Show was so good. I was such a fucking twat. Like, you know,
I like
and now sorry,
I like their trans coverage.
the Daily Show. Oh,
On the nose there.
it's unbelievable. But like the you know, the that good and evil side that just totally disappeared for during the trans thing for me, because like so much evil was being actively promoted by the left. And then October 7th, you know, so I don't know, I kind of found my fellow travelers really repulsive by then, you know. And
I think
as a result,
Trump broke comedy because he was funnier than most of the comedians, and they just couldn't handle that.
yeah, he is genuinely funny. That's the terrible thing. The terrible thing facing liberals, you know. And in the same way that people couldn't come back at his insults, you know, liberals can't really, you know, utilize. What liberals are doing now is they're memorizing insults. You know, I get "you're divorced" about 1,000 times a day, you know, and I get like you know, variations on the same 3 or 4 things, you know, over and over again. And it's because they memorize it. It's why you often see Amnesty International posting something like "trans women are women" like 5 times in a row in the same tweet. It's because they're memorizing these positions. They don't believe in them. They don't come to them naturally. They just memorize them, you know?
And they can't improvise because of that threat of the mob, like you were saying.
Absolutely. And also they don't have the research because they've not looked into it beyond trans women or women. So once that's undermined, they've nowhere to go, which is why they often block or shut down the conversation or express outrage that the question or the statement was even uttered, you know? It's crazy.
So I've found, I have a small podcast I do with Nina Paley.
Yes.
Heterodorx.
I do with, Heterodorx.
I love Nina.
We use humor on there.
Yeah,
we make
sure.
fun of ourselves, we make fun of each other, and I find that humor is actually a good way to deliver truth.
Yeah.
And if you can make fun of yourself, if you can make yourself the target, you're not punching down on anyone. You're taking the opportunity to sort of invite people to laugh at you instead of trying to gang up on somebody.
Yeah. You're not punching down, you're beating off.
Yeah.
Uh, I have a whole video channel about that, which is subscription only. Hopefully, it'll
Okay.
be linked. Uh,
Oh, Corey's OnlyFans, huh? Sorry.
yeah, I only have one, but I'm hoping for a second one pretty soon.
Yeah.
Uh,
You put the only into that fan. Yeah.
But
but
like,
it's lonely fans.
but
I
I'll tell you what
well,
happened.
well, well,
Sorry, no,
well,
go on, Corey.
what I want to put this maybe as a question. I can't think of anybody who is my ideological opposite who uses humor that way.
Mm,
Who is funny?
yeah.
Who's somebody who I disagree with that uses humor like that anymore? I can't think of anybody. Now that's probably not thinking on my part, but who is that?
Well, today they went absolutely nuts over. I mean, it's really funny because cartooning in the UK is becoming increasingly toothless because
Yeah.
satirical cartoons use grotesque images and so on, and everybody gets insulted. But there was the mildest thing about Jeremy Corbyn, just unbelievably mild and not funny, and just like, it was already bad, if you know what I mean. It was already watered down. This happened today. I've been tweeting a little bit about it, but like if they find that insulting and offensive, I mean, how could you get through a normal conversation with someone? I mean, it's another reason why Joe Rogan does these 3 hour conversations and these politicians don't turn up for them. Like, just like trans activists with their memorized lines, they just can't go further than 5, 10 minutes without exposing themselves, you know? It's very interesting. Sorry.
On the point of liberal comedy and its decline, who's the guy who did Borat?
Oh, it's Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah. He was really, really big, but now he seems like a anti-free speech kind of shell. Like, so I'm wondering, it
Coming up
was
the ladder.
okay at a certain point to make fun of conservatives. I think that's what liberal comedy was about, because they could make fun of conservatives, the stodgy people, the people who are stuck in their ways, the backward people. But once liberals became so dominant and insulated from those people, all of that mockery just became contempt. Like there was no warm-heartedness at
No,
the bottom of that mockery. So I'm wondering if you can inject that humanity back into comedy and what that would look like. You brought up Cheers. Everybody loved the audience loved the characters. The characters, even though they had
they loved each other.
conflicts, but they loved each other. It was based on like they're all friends.
Yeah, yeah. I think people are hungry for anything like that at the moment. Something to just remind us all that we're human. And I feel like the cultural conversation. Well, 2 things have happened. First of all, I think there's been 10 years of cultural stagnation. I don't think we'll look back at the last 10 years as a high point in cultural history. Music's still good. Horror movies are still good for some reason. But there's very few comedies. There's no romantic movies because millennials decided they didn't want to see people kissing, and it's all just kind of slowed to a stop. And now we have the AI, which is going to close down studios. There's going to be no way we need these giant studios. When I just saw a thing just there where they recreated using AI 10 sitcoms, including the Hulk in a sitcom and the Mario Brothers in a sitcom. And it just looks incredible. It's still got that randomized quality and Happy Valley sense that makes it feel like AI. But once creators start figuring out how to get around those, it's just going to change everything, you know? So yeah. So what was the question? Let me remind myself.
Well, I don't know. There's just a broader question
Oh,
about.
the making fun of conservatives thing. Yeah, no, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It was power corrupts, and now you have someone like John Oliver who's able to go on and do a half hour on the trans issue, and not say a single thing that's true or relevant,
Or funny.
or funny, with a single joke construction. It's
I
a bit
heard laughter though, so it had to be funny to someone.
yeah,
Well, some of these shows they just have like a live audience that laughs on command.
yeah, they're like, and also, who's going to see that except for fellow liberals, who are all, marching in step. So, but like, yeah, they got lazy. Even John Stewart. It really surprised me that John Stewart joined in with the trans thing and the puberty blockers are perfectly safe thing. That was like, I mean, I think with that, with those two have once it becomes completely clear what's happening,
Hmm.
I don't think I think John, I don't know. I'd love to see how they react to it. John Stewart will be interesting. I think the other guy is way down in the rabbit hole because he's in a group of people who've got a trans child, and that's just made the group ridiculous, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, but John Stewart, I don't know. Maybe he could be persuaded to try and undo some of the damage he's done, you know.
Hmm. This we're recording this a couple days after the Late Show, is it, was
Yes,
canceled, the
Colbert.
Colbert's
Yes, yes.
show, which is another, that's a watershed moment in liberal comedy. Like that's showing some sort of writing on the wall.
Absolutely. But also, it's not so much liberal as the whole talk show format, you know. Like I used to look at what's his name? The guy, Conan O'Brien.
Mm.
And he went from working on The Simpsons and
Mhm.
doing all these things to being a chat show host. And I always wondered why would you do that? You know, what isn't it more fun to write great comedy like The Simpsons than it is to interview boring stars who are on the kind of circuit just because they've got some crappy superhero movie out. And I think everybody's starting to feel the same thing, you
Mm.
know. One of the terrible things, terrible. I don't know if it's terrible or not. It's just a thing. But the whole all Hollywood glamour is completely gone. You know, when every actor has a biography out and an Instagram feed and a Twitter feed, you know, the reason people used to watch the Oscars was so that they could see these people out in the open. Oh my God, look, they're just ordinary people having a laugh in an audience, you know. But now we know they're ordinary people because
Mm.
they keep fucking telling us on Twitter. You know, they keep coming. Like I often wonder, can you imagine what would have happened if John Wayne had had Twitter or even someone as beloved as Jimmy Stewart, you know?
Mm.
Oh, you know what? Sometimes there's a little bit too much immigration. You know, it'd be all over, and we wouldn't have as much love for those old stars as we do now. So, you know, we've got this. If I was a agent of someone, I would just say, you know, do not post, don't post anything.
Well,
And yeah,
the other side of that is that we find that ordinary people are actually more interesting than these stars. They don't, because
yes,
they don't have scripts and they show up on shows like mine and your guys's. They're just like normal people, and our attention, they're more relatable and more interesting, and
mm,
they're more connectable. You can actually like have a direct conversation without all that pretense, all that what the star fucking or that
yeah,
glamour
Well, they're less
interrupting the
scared.
yeah.
right,
It's scary.
They're less scared. They're not trying to hold things back because half the
Mm.
reason that the people that we talk to are the ones we talk to is because they opened up their mouths and got some stick for it, and then
mm,
they said, "More stick, please."
yeah, absolutely. But also, I think there was a moment when the reality TV thing happened. That's when actors and writers started to become expendable. Suddenly, editors were the most important storytellers
Mm.
because
And
you get like
producers, yeah.
a ton of material and you have to make a story out of it, you know.
Mm.
So, you know, in a way, you know, all of this is just, it's like, I remember, I feel guilty about this because around the time that Napster was happening and there was all these conversations about about downloading
File
music
sharing,
and so
yeah.
on. Yeah, file sharing. I met these two guys from the music industry and they looked kind of pained and I didn't take it in because I was too young and stupid, you know. But like, but my attitude was, well, you know, it used to be a scarce resource, music, but now it's not. And you can't really charge people for something that's not a scarce resource because they're going to take it anyway. And I remember seeing this kind of look of sadness in their eyes because it was, I think they thought that I was going to, you know, pick up the sword for musicians. And I wish I had. I
Hmm.
wish I had gone in the early days. Don't fucking download music, pay for it, you know. But I was part of a kind of I wouldn't say techno utopian, but somewhat over optimistic take on everybody being suddenly the creator and the audience and it all being democratic and stuff. I thought this was great. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, well, it didn't turn out to be that great.
How did it change? I don't know. I think I might have a differing opinion than you, but musicians need to sell concert tickets now. Like the tracks are basically the taste test.
Sure.
Right? They're the free sample.
Yeah. Actually, funny enough, it was Mick Jagger, who apparently has always been very, very money conscious and very clever with his money. But he said that we were talking about the window of good news, but there was also a window of musicians being paid extraordinary amounts for their work. But then again, that system was screwed as well because it meant big bands like U2 and no one else had any share of it, you know. So, but I have to say, the quality of music is still great. There's some incredible stuff out there.
Wow.
The new Cameron Winter album and things like that are really keeping me going.
What was that? What is it called?
Cameron Winter.
Cameron Winter.
Yes, just get his new album. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called. I'll try and remember, but it's 10 or like it's one of the first albums I've listened to as an album in years, and it's like just banger after banger. It's amazing, amazing.
All
Not
right.
background music, because then
I don't know why, but for me, music started being terrible when I turned 30. I don't.
Oh, really? No, I've always liked it. Because I always resented when I was 18. I used to hang around with all these musicians or all these music writers in Hot Press magazine in Ireland,
Yeah.
and they just had no interest in music, and I was so shocked. I was like, no, but there's always something new coming on. There's always something good, going to be something good out there. And I always promised myself I would never stop listening to music, and I still get the most joy, I think, out of it. More
Well,
than any other art form.
when you were younger, Graham, it was your friends were the algorithm. There was no Spotify tailoring your playlist for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's good and bad. There's actually a band who do really good lyrics about Pagoda, they're called. And all their songs are about, or most of their songs, Bogoda. Is it Bogoda? Yeah. Or Bodiga. Bodiga. That's it. Sorry, Bodiga. And all their songs are about, like there's one song actually that has a line about your music algorithm, and yeah, it's a very frictionless experience listening to music now. But having said that, like the other day, I discovered through my Discover Weekly list on Spotify, which just pops up every week with about 14 new songs, and nearly every single one of them was a banger. And I was like, oh, this one too. And I was liking them all, and they've all gone into my liking. And
Oh,
then I found out about a band called Family Fodder. Have you ever heard of them?
oh yeah.
I never heard of them. They were like the 60s, right? They were the 60s, and I found three songs that are just extraordinarily good and could actually have been written yesterday. I thought they were a contemporary band.
Isn't this that AI band that became popular? It has 1 million downloads.
Oh my God, could it be? No, I
I
don't
think
think so.
so.
No, Family
Did you
Fodder,
get
I think they're a
hoodwinked?
real band from the 60s. Yeah. So
Ah,
so it's just I just think that there's bad things about the availability of music, but also I'm so happy I've just discovered this incredible band in the 60s that I didn't know existed.
hmm.
And there's
Yeah,
also,
but
and I'll tell you another great thing about it is that you can excavate, like there's one band called, what are they called? Life Without Buildings. They had one album. They found this girl who just read out poetry, and they said, hey, why don't you be our lead singer? And she reads out this poetry, and it's absolutely stunning. It's so beautiful, and it's just extraordinary. And they had like I think one or two gigs, and then it's disbanded. So you have, which is what I always hope the internet would do. You have this wonderful moment in history, just hopefully captured for all time. But and people able to share it who normally they would only have been of interest to a tiny audience in the
yeah.
universities where they were playing. So I love all that. I love all
Wow.
that.
You have such a
Wonderfully
rapacious appetite, Graham.
written. Yeah, yeah. I don't read as much though. I don't know if you guys have caught the not reading bug.
It's hard to read
It is,
nowadays.
isn't it?
It's hard for my attention to land and stay on a page.
Yeah.
Well, I started a Jewish conversion last year,
Really?
Oh.
and so I've been reading a lot lately.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, wow. That's what made you interested in that?
Well, my father was Jewish,
Oh,
and
okay.
he didn't share a lot of it. Obviously, I knew he was Jewish when I was growing up, but we didn't celebrate holidays too much, a little bit. But um, he passed away in 2000,
I'm
and
sorry to hear that.
I just turned 50 in June, and I've been thinking, man, I should really try to connect more and try to understand a little bit better where I'm from, which I
Mm,
suppose is something that is, as people mature, that's something that they have a hunger for, is connection or reconnection.
mm,
And I didn't expect to convert at all. I was just taking a class, Judaism 101, just so that I could learn more about it.
mm.
And out of about a dozen people that were taking the class, I think it was just me and one other person. And I wasn't there to convert, but here I go.
Yeah, great,
But I'm
great. Well,
reading a lot now.
yes.
About what? Israeli history, the Jewish faith.
The Jewish faith. There's a book I'm in about halfway through that's called How to Pray Like a Jew. So it explains it explains the daily prayers and the services and the meaning behind it and where it comes from, and
Mm,
contextualizes it, so you're not just walking in and following along in a book. It gives you a lot more helps me to develop a lot more understanding about what it's all about. But
mm.
man, I'm reading a lot lately. I didn't expect to. If you'd asked me a year ago, hey, are you going to be a practicing Jew?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, "Are you going to be reading a book anytime?"
No, yeah, it's not. If it's not uploaded to X one tweet at a time, I probably wouldn't read it. But
Yeah, yeah,
there's this whole thing called a Torah that you have
yeah.
to read too. So that's pretty intensive.
Oh,
Sure.
have you been a-religious for most of your life,
Oh
Cori?
yeah,
Or
I had no religion at all,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
it's my belief at this point. I don't think anybody should have to feel compelled to stay religious. I don't think that there's a lot of value in uh, forcing people to be religious, but I think children should be raised with a religion.
I tell you why I somewhat agree.
Yeah,
Uh, because I think that being at peace with mystery is a very good thing.
hmm,
You know, there's two at the moment we have again the internet is like this huge can opener that can dispel any mystery, that can
hmm.
open the can, or that can just kind of say, oh, what's the problem? Well, we don't know what the Bermuda Triangle was all about, which was a big thing when I was a kid. The Bermuda Triangle, we were all worried about disappearing there.
yeah. Turns out
Yeah,
it was
and
the Jews.
what? Sorry.
Turns out that it was the Jews.
Yeah.
It's always the juice.
Yeah.
Oh,
And as soon as that explanation came in, we were all like, ah, of course. No, but like, all that mystery. And again, it's similar with, like, if you look back at all the great mysterious or weird science fiction that was written in the 40s and 50s, and 60s and 70s, and then it had to kind of stop because we know so much
Hmm.
about our world. No, sorry, I'm not saying that it stopped. There's great science fiction out there. But like what's gone is the kind of H.P. Lovecraft sense of what is reality and is there something terrible beyond? And that was a big playpen you could play in at the time and still actually have something in the back of your head. Oh, maybe it's true, but now, no
Hmm.
chance. The Bermuda Triangle is just a bunch of coincidences explained by
Yeah.
whatever.
Well,
It grows and shrinks according to what it needs to
to
be.
add to your thought, mystery on the internet converts mysteriously into conspiracy,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Like we're
Yes.
trying to find out the pattern and the true nature but it's all materialistics, like who makes decisions, who is in power, what power is really
Yeah.
operating, like, with the whole Epstein thing going on. Like that's
Yeah. Someone wrote to
like,
me the other day. They said something like, uh, why are you ignoring the fact that Epstein was this and that? And I was like, a Mossad agent and so on. And I was like, you know as little as I do about it. He could
right.
still be alive for all you know. Do you know what I mean? they could have taken a photograph of him, like being let out, and suddenly,
Yeah.
he's living somewhere at a billionaire's hideout,
But
enjoying.
that natural, beautiful, wonderful desire for answers is trained on not the
Yes,
mysterious, not the greater questions, but on these very
yes,
circumstantial and
and they're
usually
unknowable.
ugly, dirty instances of power and corruption rather than
Yeah, yeah,
profundity.
yeah. Well, and then look what happened when all the Kennedy things were released, and no one gives a damn. It's like it didn't say anything that didn't, back up
Hmm.
what we've always thought. But like I think when you say people are hungry for truth, they are, but they're also hungry. They're also hungry for storytellers or
Hmm.
stories, because every human being is a storyteller, and when they get information, they put it in the right order that it tells a story.
Hmm.
And so that's fine, but it often, as we've seen with the internet, it leads to things like for instance, my story that people tell is that, I went mad. I don't know what it is. I went mad for some reason and just started abusing
It was
trans people.
Gamergate. They finally
Oh,
got to you.
Gamergate. Yeah, that's part of my story as well. But people just will fill in the blanks because they are storytellers,
Hmm.
and it's another reason, apart from what I was saying earlier about satire puncturing the bubble, but it's another reason why we really need to get stories back. We need to destroy the superhero cookie cutter thing where the only thing that differentiates the movies is that suddenly, oh, Hot Girl is black or whatever. That's the only thing they can change. They can't change the stories because the stories are based on children's comics, so they're very formulaic. So people, I want to get back to a time of seeing. I mean, God, can you imagine going to the cinema and seeing a movie like Dog Day Afternoon these days? It would
Hmm.
be electric. It would be absolutely electric. In the same way, if you said to the BBC, "Hey, if you start telling the truth, you'll probably
Yeah.
get loads of viewers," the way Joe Rogan does.
Hmm.
Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's like we're living in a time of lies and bad stories.
Yeah, well, and contempt for the audience too.
Yeah, yeah,
Either
absolutely.
overt contempt by lying and indoctrination, or overt contempt by not trusting them with a new idea.
Absolutely. But
Well, it's indoctrination that we're trying to, not we, that they want people to treat other people better, right? They're trying to correct injustices. They don't see the films or TV shows that they're making as entertainment. They see them as educational vehicles.
Hmm.
yes,
So
yes,
so that's why
exactly.
it sucks. It's not entertaining.
Yes,
Hmm.
but there's another thing as well, which I think is the fault of graphic novels. I used to be a
Oh,
big fan of graphic novels, and I think that something that's happened is that a certain kind of tone from graphic novels has spread into films, which
Hmm.
is cynical, and it also does it like it's hard to explain, but imagine if you saw the good guy in a film, to pick an extreme example, an innocent person while trying to rescue someone or something like that. Most audiences will go, they shot an innocent person, and they will think about that for the rest of the film, and they won't allow themselves to identify with that person. But these kind of graphic novel writers, they think that you can be really, like, you can live on the edge, that everyone can be a kind of cool, whatever it is, kind of character, like
Hmm.
a sort of cynical or whatever. And they don't do the necessary work of building empathy in the audience by showing the character doing good things or saying something that makes you go, yeah, that's really true. They don't think they need to do any of that work. Often because they're writing, like, for instance, the new TV show was mentioned about with a black superhero, and I saw a video on it, and they said
Ironheart.
that's it,
Yeah.
and they said she does not do anything that makes you realize she's the hero. She just talks about whatever, but she doesn't do anything. She doesn't show you she's a good person by her actions in the thing. And one of the great ways of creating drama is by having a character who says one thing and does another, right?
Hmm.
That's where the character is. That's
Hmm.
once someone says something and then they don't behave the way they said they would, that's a character.
Hmm.
And they don't again, because people aren't reading, they're not going back to things like Kafka and Dostoevsky and things like that to deepen their understanding of human nature and write better about it. It's all just graphic novel stuff. You know what I mean?
Do you bulk that in your comedy, Graham?
Do I what it into my comedy?
Bulk it? Do you overturn that trope or that failure of storytelling?
Oh yeah, I try
How do
to.
people act in comedies?
Yeah, it's one
Or
of
do
those.
they just behave?
It's a hard thing to. I'll give you. This might illustrate the answer in the form of showing something. But you guys, because you grew up here, you don't know about Bilco. You weren't big. Probably didn't watch a lot of Bilco.
I don't think so.
Okay, 1950s, created by Nat Silver, I think. And for some weird reason, it was sold to the UK. The whole series was sold to the UK. So they used to show it all the time. It used to be on at night, and we would be as familiar with Bilko as you guys would be with Gilligan's Island, you know. And so, like, it was on all the time, and I love it. It's one of my favorite comedies of all time. And
What's the
I
situation?
oh, it's sorry, after the war, and it's like a bunch of soldiers living on their Company A. It's really funny. It's so simple, but there's Company A, and their arch rivals are Company B. You know, it's stuff like that. That's great. But Bilko is this guy he runs gambling for his men. He keeps taking money off him. He's a bit of a louse. You know, but he's funny and he's sharp and he can get out. He can talk his way out of any problem. But the reason you watch the show is to watch Bilko being funny. And that means that for the entire episode, Bilko behaves like a louse. And then at the very end, they always reveal, actually, he's not. He loves his men. He's a good man when it comes down to it, blah, blah, blah. But if you reverse that, you wouldn't have a comedy show, you know? If you reverse that, you would have half an hour of someone being nice and then a joke at the end, which is what a lot of sitcoms feel like. But Bilko, it was just a lovely tension between, uh, you know, him doing all these terrible things and knowing it's going to turn out all right and wondering how they're going to get him, how they're going to, what's the word, vindicate him or not vindicate, but how they're going to
Redeem?
redeem him this
Yeah.
time.
Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting because that makes me think of The Sopranos, Mad Men, Breaking Bad, The Wire, Deadwood. These are all bad people doing bad things and they never get redeemed. They just kind of
Yeah,
get away with it. And of course, they're not comedies, but they're brilliantly written.
sure.
But it kind of takes it kind of takes a bite out of the values of the audience over time. It's just a kind of a exercise in degradation.
Yeah, with The Sopranos, it's this very clever thing. One week you'll see Paulie and you'll feel sorry for him because he's going through stuff with his mother. And then the next week you see him, torturing someone or whatever it happens to be. And you think to yourself, why the hell did I? And I think that points to a real truth. I think even bad people are often good and nice and do nice things. And then they do bad things and then they do nice things. And it's like every human being is just a mess of stuff. But you see on The Sopranos, I would fall into that time and time again. Oh, Ralphie, I love Ralphie. Actually, Ralphie is the worst person who ever lived, and it just kept happening. And it keeps reminding you, this is what you're enjoying, this is what you're watching, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a better version of what that guy who did Funny Games and uh, what's his most recent film? I can't remember. But guy who writes very icy movies about middle class people
Yeah.
being hurt, and he plays with your hopes and expectations. But I think The Sopranos did it in a much more kind of mature way. Do you remember the episode? I've often thought about this, but do you remember the episode where when he kills what's his name, his right hand man, like
Chris.
Chris. He
Yeah.
kills Christopher. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Tony kills Chris. They get
Do
in
you
a car
remember what he
wreck.
does
Yeah.
after he kills Chris?
Goes and takes mescaline. Well, is
Takes
that
masculine,
yeah.
has a great time. You see him looking at this guy's going, whoa. Then he goes back home and he fucks Chris's mistress. And the whole episode is just he kills Christopher, and the whole episode is just him being rewarded for it. It's extraordinary. I haven't thought about it. I've thought about it all the time ever since. And I think it points to a certain thing that's true about criminals, which is apparently, I may have said this before, but apparently criminals, one way they have of catching criminals is that if they hear a car is outside, let's say a Costco or something, the police will drive around the parking lot, but the first place they'll check is the disabled parking spots because criminals love parking in disabled parking spots because they're like, oh, that's all for all the idiots. I don't follow the rules. And so they first check the parking spots, the disabled parking spots. And I love that's how criminals see the world. It's like a huge opportunity and nothing stopping them from taking advantage of it. So I thought that was very truthful, that episode. I've thought about it ever since.
Wow.
Like Wellington went into Paris and had sex with all of Napoleon's mistresses and wife. Like, can you imagine that? He won and it was like, okay, I'll see you at 4 o'clock.
So we're nominally here to promote Genspect's upcoming Bigger Picture Conference in Albuquerque over the weekend of September 27th to 28th. I'm doing a mini-series just interviewing and hanging out with a lot of the speakers that are going to be there. I just want to take a time to tune the lens on the gender issue that we've all been involved in.
You first, Cori. Let's.
Well, I can't remember exactly what the name of my program is called, but I can give you a little bit of what it's about. I've been testifying across the United States on bills that would, first of all, prevent boys and men from playing in women's sports. We know that that's unfair and unsafe, and for whatever reason, we're in a reality where people don't see that as obvious. So I go and try to update the law around that.
How's that going? What have you had to really lean on as a tactic to communicate the reality to the lawmakers?
Being that I'm a man that has had the transsexual medicalization, it's pretty easy for me to go up and say, hey, it would be unfair if I competed with women, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And that seems to be a pretty effective technique. And I actually have had a number of women say, how come you can't just write that down and have a woman say it? And it seems like it's obvious, but...
Yeah, no, I find all that really, that's one reason why I'm glad I no longer live in the UK. There's so much policing of activism that it's just exhausting,
Yeah.
But yeah.
This topic particularly.
Yes.
Cori, your talk is going to be authenticity over evidence, metaphysical trends in the trans rights activism.
Well, so every time, and then I also talk about why we shouldn't medicalize gender dysphoria in children. We got to let them grow up a little bit. And every time that I go to a legislator or a legislature, there are the activists, the trans activists, there are the parents, and inevitably there are clergy members of mainline Protestant churches there to enforce the orthodoxy of boys and men and women's sports and the sexual disfigurement of children. And I thought, well, this is weird. This predates any of my own interest in conversion, but certainly they intersect at some point. And I talk to people. I'm very conversational, and because I have certain traits, people assume I'm on a certain side of the issue, and they'll open up to me a little easier and talk to me about why they're there to present their viewpoints. And I've talked to a good number of clergy members.
And what is their excuse? Well, how do they justify supporting it?
Well, and this is what I'm really trying to get to the bottom of, and why I'm reading so much lately. They believe that there's some way to tap into your authentic and true self. That there is within you a source of inner knowledge about, at least about your gender. Who knows what else it might encompass?
Right, so it's almost a religious position.
Well, it is a religious position, and in fact, this whole idea that universal truths can be determined through self-knowledge or self-realization or through epiphany, and that our bodies are prisons that we can, we're just spirits riding around in bodies, that there's some sort of divine spark. That does have a religious origin.
So yeah, there's some overlap, isn't there?
There is. It's just the origin is not really a Christian origin. So it's very interesting to me for having these Protestant clergy members show up expressing doctrines, which to me, I'm not a Christian and I never have been, but they seem to be fundamentally anti-Christian doctrines. But they show up in all of their collars and their vestments, and they are on the side of self-knowledge, and they do not want the politics to come in and block anybody's ability to have this like true form of self-expression. Right. And that's what I'll be talking about, trying to get into the origins of that a little bit, and to expose the what is, in my opinion, a corruption of Christian and Jewish, for that matter, doctrines by gender ideology.
There's I've explored the ideas that animate late stage liberalism or very progressive liberalism, and you can see that it starts with Protestantism and Unitarian doctrines and this slow Miltonian switch from thy will be done to my will be done. And authenticity is the vector by which that kind of happens or is spoken of in modern contexts. It's like, who am I? The individual is most important. And anything that's non-consensual, be it a family relationship, be a relationship to reality, to my body, if I don't consent to it, it's a violation of my being, my very self, and needs to be done away with. And that's why this talk of human rights, everything is a human right. The internet's a human right. Food is a human right. Housing is a human right. Gender affirming surgery, it's a human right. What that really is talking about is every human should have the ability to manifest whatever they want into the world.
Yes.
And the internet facilitates that brain rot because we can just play a video game and choose body type A, body type B, and play out these fantasies that we have, explore and exploit these fantasies to just absurd degrees, and then have a bunch of people in these echo chambers. There's that great 4chan post, grow up in the 90s, want to fuck a toaster, talk to my friends about it, get beaten up, never think about it again. Grow up in 2020, want to fuck a toaster, go online, find a whole community. Now my life is fucked up and all I do is fuck a toaster all day long, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's really fascinating and actually a tragedy that religious figures are throwing religious authority behind this. Really, it's a heresy. It's a very corrupt idea of the individual and the self.
Who's that figure in the trans debate who was also involved in the satanic panic? Is it Barbara?
No.
You know who I mean.
I do. She says that you can tell a child's trans because she removes the barrettes from her hair.
Yeah, or that she undoes her onesie.
Or undoes right. Yeah.
And she was a big wig in the satanic panic. So the fact that she's around again for this,
Aaron Saft.
Yes, that's it, Aaron Saft. The fact that she's around for this again should tell people everything they need to know. Really, you know what I mean? It's like a religion.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, you can't just draw a conclusion because of one person, but you should start to see a dot to connect to other dots when you see something like that.
Yeah.
And there's something really, there are forces acting on the Protestant church which are way beyond gender ideology. It goes all the way out to demographic change. These churches are shrinking, and they need strategies to survive.
Yeah.
And so one of the forces, among several forces, is how do you keep the churches afloat? And you need new people. And one of the ways
relevant.
You find the groups that have been historically marginalized. They truly have been. You don't have to make up any facts. You can see that they're marginalized. So now you go and you make a marketing pitch, which is, to me, very cynical, but maybe it's pragmatic. You want some way to fill the pews, but what's happening from testimony that I've heard from various churchgoers is that they are there to receive a message. They want to hear the message of here is moral behavior. Here is good behavior. They want to have that inspiration delivered to them and supported in an environment that holds them to the expectations of being good people. They want to have those messages, and there's a conflict created when there's the promotion and internalization of questionable behaviors, and people alleging that they can change sex is one of those questionable disagreements, right? So how somebody presents themselves, how somebody calls themselves, is a slightly different matter from requiring other people to accept the false claim that people can change sex.
So it seems very like on an incredibly basic level that anyone could understand. It seems kind of sacrilegious to say that we can fix God's mistakes. Like, I'm surprised that it's taken off in any church. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, when you put it that way, but the way that they'll put it, Graham, God is, well, first of all, God is neither male nor female. God is non-binary. This is an emerging.
Right. Great. That's going to be fun.
So it's some of the churches have dropped, there's the Lord's Prayer. They've rewritten it so that it's not using masculine pronouns, and they're reconfiguring it. So it's not fixing God's mistake. It's instead, you have it all wrong. It is embracing God's special. God has facilitated this understanding of like self-acceptance.
Right.
So they're reconfigured around these types of rationalizations.
But wasn't the Lord Jesus? How can they change? Like, Lord Jesus wasn't a she or a non-binary.
Jesus was the first queer.
Yeah.
That's good. That's what's going to be clipped.
Well, except that's what they say. It's not a matter of controversy, or it's not a joke. That's what they say.
Yeah, we've seen a similar thing in the UK. The Church of England seems to be particularly prone to fall, and that's the Protestant church that seems to be particularly prone to capture by this nonsense. It's very interesting.
Well, they have access to lots and lots of money, and they're using it to affect political change on these topics.
Do you see the attitudes changing, either of you?
I'd like to know if you persuaded anyone, Cori.
Me? What am I trying to persuade people to?
Well, when you said that people were more open to you because they assumed you were on one side of the debate.
No, I'm not trying to persuade them.
Sure, but
they're totally on the other side. I'm trying to learn what their viewpoint is, because they have already. This is my philosophy. I think 80% of people are up for having their minds changed. 10% are on the extremes, and on one side or the other, they're never going to change. These people who are showing up are never going to change. I'm not trying to persuade them. I'm trying to understand what their mindset is, because
but then again,
I want to beat them to get the 80%.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I guess, yeah, no, you're right. And in fact, I saw a very interesting debate between Mia Hughes and some guy who has a trans daughter, and it was so frustrating. He simply, basically, what you've got are two sides who are starting off from completely incompatible starting points.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And so you just can't talk. You sometimes can't talk to these people. And Mia told me that, I said, "Did you speak behind the scenes or anything?" And she said, "Yeah, he just doesn't get it. He doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And you could explain it till the cows come home, and he'll never get it."
Yeah, I'm not worried about this. They're set in their beliefs. They believe what they believe. I don't mind that they believe what they believe. I want to talk to the people who are not set in their beliefs.
Right, right.
They have all the money and the power, though. Or do they? Nah.
These things change.
Yes, yes. I think it's so different than what it used to be even a year ago.
Money and power are not enough by themselves to have legitimacy. And if you
Yeah.
can destroy legitimacy, then money won't rescue it and power won't rescue it.
Yep.
Release the Epstein files.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens on that front. Probably not what anybody's going to want to be satisfied. Not going to satisfy anybody. Graham, your talk is called "What Just Happened."
Yes, yes. And it's kind of a potential title for a book that I'm.
Is that performance art? You're going to have like a flash mob, and then you're gonna stand. What just happened?
I
You're gonna
could do,
explain it
yeah.
all.
I could just get paid people to come on stage and beat me up.
It
No,
seems to be kind of your sexuality, if you have one, if you don't mind me saying.
it's basically just about, like, I've always said this, but one of the things we skipped over as a species was the conversation about the internet. I mean, I know there's been loads of little conversations, and people who are interested in these things really, there's thousands of hours of people talking about these issues. But for some reason, more widely, on a kind of wider social, interpersonal level, no one has asked what did it do to us? There was in the 90s, and I remember the moment, 95 or 96, suddenly broadband, and everything changed. Everything changed so fast. And now it's changing again with AI. It's going to change again, and next year will be unrecognizable to this year. But we still haven't addressed the first problem, which I believe started actually, Ben, in Gamergate. I now realize that Gamergate was gamers realizing much sooner than I did what was going on. And then much sooner than I was, than the time when I was being cancelled and smeared, I saw the same thing happen to the people on the other side of Gamergate, but I didn't recognize it as such,
What
because
was that? What were they recognizing?
Hmm, hmm. Well, I remember there was one guy who I was following, and he, like a lot of trans-identified people, some old pornography, child pornography that he'd written turned up. And people used to write to me, "You're supporting this," and I just thought they were lying because, like, that's what Gamergaters did, I was told. They hate gay people, they hate women. And also this guy was using female pronouns, so I thought he was defending a woman, you know? So it's like I just was in the machine and I was part of the machine. And then when I got cancelled, I was spat out of the machine, for which I'll always be grateful. I think it is a very nice thing not to be in the machine. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. I wanted to say, look, it's not enough to say we need to end gender ideology and all its kind of all the physical harm it's doing in the world. We need to immunize ourselves against the next thing coming down the pipe. I mean, I think we've seen how quickly gender ideologues have jumped from gender to Palestine. That's going to keep happening. You're going to get, like, we call it in the UK, the omni cause that unites all left-wing people. It's always the same things, and it never changes according to which country you're in. In fact, I think a lot of the time British protesters are aping American protesters. You'll often see British people over here getting into arguments with Helen Staniland and people like that, and they use the phrase "y'all" or
Ah,
what have you got against trans folks, you know?
yeah.
And so what you have is a rhetorical device that was first popularized by Obama, now being said by autistic kids in Milton Keynes, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, I just want to talk about why. Why did it happen? How did it take such control? Um, and kind of use the speech to do a bit of research myself and understand it, as
Hmm.
much as I can.
Hmm.
That's the plan.
Yeah, whoever, I've been saying this for a while, whoever can capture the narrative for the next generation, the framing for the next generation kind of wins the game. And that's the game that we're all playing as influencers, broadly speaking, as content creators, whether you're writing comedy or you're doing podcasts, you're trying to get a leg up and influence the next generation.
Yeah.
And whether it's like there's the negative aspect, or not negative, but there's the inoculation aspect, like toughen them up, make them wise to the tricks that are playing. But you also need to provide a positive vision. And in the woke, anti-woke kind of debacle or debate, or I don't know, like cash cow, like not a lot of people are trying to, it doesn't say, it's very rare for somebody to try to develop a message for young men, young women, and with the, God bless their hearts, the TERFs, they have a script that's kind of long in the tooth. Everything's the patriarchy and the gender, the sexism and stuff, and it works for them. But I don't see it going forward because, like the dating market's just completely tanked, and teaching women to fear men just doesn't work anymore. Women are getting ahead in the workplace. Where's the positive messaging for women in that? Where's the positive? And on the other side of the aisle with the right wing discourse, people are trying to capture the young men, and they're kind of dangling all these specters in front of young men that go like the Nick Fuentes and the Andrew Tates, and then a lot of the other influencers, the more conservative influencers, they're trying to project masculine authority. There's many ways to be a man or to capture the juices of men, like the creative,
Don't worry.
the creative
Don't worry.
aspects. So the role models and the gender debate, or the gender topic, kind of is focused a lot on the female experience. The males kind of go through the phase and kind of back out of it. Like, you don't see a lot of male transitioners. You do, but they're not really. I don't even think detransitioners necessarily need to be the center of the movement. They have their own lives to live, and they need to go through the phase of coming out of that and speaking their story, and then going on living their life again. But gender is kind of a dead end.
But also,
Gender ideology is kind of a dead end for men and for women, young men, young women. I don't know if it's going to be popular as it has been for the millennials. I don't know if Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to be that into it.
No, I think one of the things I've often thought about this movement is that it's essentially a hippie movement. Like in the same way that people in LA before Sharon Tate was killed used to let the Manson family and similar, people wander around their house dirty and barefoot because they thought there was something special about these people, that they had reached an understanding of the world that they could only guess at. So you had all these very familiar sight middle class people inviting them into their homes and so on, and of course they turned out to be absolute psychopaths. But like I will say one thing. I don't think I will disagree with one thing you said, Benjamin. I don't think I've never hear radical feminists talking about patriarchy. I find that's become a very unfashionable term because it's
Has it?
Yeah, I think
decreased in
so. I think
usage, yeah.
because it's become so associated with liberal or intersectional feminism. Like the patriarchy is. I mean, I'm going to get in trouble probably but I don't think it is a patriarchy. I think it's more like, at the moment. Actually, I will say that the trans movement, you could argue, is a patriarchy, is a patriarchal attempt at a power grab. I don't know whether you agree, Corey. But no, okay, I'll get to the end of my point and then I'll stop. But like for me, that's why I sometimes call it a white power movement, because it's white men suddenly are back at the top of the pyramid when they were displaced from it during Me Too, you know? So all these people who aren't getting surgeries and so on, that's what they're doing. It's a power grab for me, Whereas with and the people, the detransitioners or so on, are just they're not even considered, because it's not nothing to do with that. It's another reason why when you argue what these kids are going through, you can't get through to people because a lot of them just don't care. It's like, well, no, this is working out great for me. Why would I complain? Anyway, Cori, sorry, where do you disagree with me on that? Do you think patriarchy is still being
Well,
settled?
I think if we look at Iran, yeah, there's patriarchy.
Yes.
But if you said, well, let's figure out a test for patriarchy, and it's got to be quantified. We're gonna quantify it.
Mm-hmm.
So, are we gonna do that by how many male senators in the United States versus female senators, or how many female graduates versus male graduates, especially higher degrees, or like there's so many different numbers you could use to try to figure out how you're going to quantify it, so that you're not just cherry picking your arguments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there's any fair test that you could build right now that shows that there's patriarchy in the United States. There's contention. There's battles over policy that are going back and forth. But if there's patriarchy, to me, there's not battles, right? There's not fights. There's not a disagreement. Right now, we're in
patriarchy wouldn't brook any.
Right, there'd be equilibrium in patriarchy. We're not at an equilibrium where there's different. You have the Andrew Tates of the world who are representative of patriarchy, but they aren't the patriarchs. Just wanting there to be a patriarchy and having a platform do not add up to a de facto patriarchy.
Yeah, and I also find it funny that all the people who support trans rights are basically arguing for a patriarchy, and they are the people who use patriarchy the most. The liberal feminists and the intersectional feminists, they use patriarchy a lot, and it's like, it kind of, you might even say that the last 10 years have been an experiment in certain, like we've seen what happened at Disney. When a top female executive had control, I think it kind of tanked because of wokeism and because of her instincts were to create art that was more empathetic or whatever, or inclusive. And that's not why people enjoy stories. They don't enjoy stories for those reasons. So you could say that there's been a bit of a kind of anti-patriarchy move over the last 10 years, and it's brought its own problems with it. Like Terry, I often, if you look at the photograph of all the staff at the Old Vic who banned Terry Gilliam from, I mean, I know he's American, but one of the UK and America's most visionary artists. And he was going to do a version of Into the Woods at the Old Vic. And they cancelled it because he made some joke about identifying as a black trans woman, basic joke.
Which she is, so I don't know the problem.
But they banned it and they made it move out to the sticks, and London was robbed of a Into the Woods, Stephen Sondheim, Terry Gilliam collaboration. And when you saw the photograph of the Old Vic staff, they were all young women with short haircuts. Yeah. So, that's an example of female power being used for evil.
I don't even want to call it female power. So, Benjamin, you were saying that the gender identity stuff is running out of gas, and how do we try to go ahead to what that next movement is? I think what's really running out of gas is not just gender identity. I think it's all of the identity-based regime. I don't want to think about in terms of one race versus another race. I don't want to think about black and white being these divisions in society. It's our melanin level plus different sorts of culture, like cultural divisions. It really is that. But we adopt these terms like black and white, and it reifies it, right? I think that's running out of gas. I think people are getting exhausted of that.
I gotta push back against that, because in a democracy, the political game theory is that voting blocks that vote for their own interests get ahead. So identity politics in a democracy is just always going to be present, and you can cleave those along class lines or along gender lines or along race lines, but those divisions are baked into the system because it's about self-interest. I guess you could do, ideally it would just be localism, like where I vote for what's good for the people in my area, for Washington or Arizona or where, like Indiana. That could be not as gendered and not as racialized as these other identity categories. But if every other identity except for white, let's just say, for sake of argument, is voting and acting in their own self-interest, and whites don't, it's just the prisoner's dilemma. It's just how do you escape that just basic rudimentary game theory? I know it's rude to think that way, and
it's not rude. It's just not right. Look at what Trump was able to do in 2024. The Hispanics, especially Hispanic men, is able to attract a lot of votes from that. That's an old Democratic voting bloc. That's the conventional wisdom. And
black people love him.
Where he was able to get a lot of support from black voters, right? So this is maybe describes a temporary state, but I think people just get burned out from having to be caricatures of whatever identity group that somebody's determined that they're supposed to be in.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I also think that patriarchy is too simplistic. I think Jordan Peterson's first chapter of much derided first chapter of his 12 Rules book, the Lobster chapter, it feels much more close to the truth that there are men who are very driven and try and rise to the top, and then there are the women who want to rise to the top by attracting those men and so forth, and that's how it's been playing out for centuries. And to try and take an artificial way of behaving with each other and impose that on this really hardwired social contract that we have with each other, it just seems absurd. And I just think that the patriarchy, it doesn't survive like that. It has to. It can't. It sort of can't. I think the best creation of one, ironically, is Margaret Atwood in The Handmaid's Tale. That's a great version of a patriarchy. But that's what a patriarchy looks like. It doesn't look like this. It certainly doesn't look like this.
I don't think patriarchy and liberalism are compatible.
Yes.
But reality and liberalism are?
Not at the moment. Depends what liberal is. It's a bit like, don't you find it fascinating how, like, we have a situation? I was telling you about the Sandy Peggy trial, the tribunal, and like she was cleared of all misconduct in an internal tribunal or an internal investigation, and yet they are still continuing with the trial against her. Or they have, or no, I think she's suing them, but like they haven't just conceded. And it's like, and every case is like this. They go down to the wire. Alison Phillips actually has to get into a courtroom and make her point, like none of them back off. I'm being sued by a guy, an actor, David Paisley, and he's been suing me for the last, I don't know when the suit happened, but it's apparently going to go on for another year, So it's
why on the basis of what do you mind?
He started off by saying defamation, but then we kept saying, well, look, we have all the proof, and we're going to bring up every single person whose business you've tried to destroy or whose life you've tried to destroy.
Oh, wow!
And so he's now moved it.
A class action.
Sorry,
it's like a class action.
No. I'm just going to bring them up to give defense against Paisley and to show what he's been up to. So when he realized he couldn't he couldn't get us on any of that stuff. He is now suing me because of some comments left on my website, you
Oh,
know, including one where I said, don't say that. That's actionable. You'll get me sued. And they're suing me for that one, you know? So it's like pure desperation, but it's like Jarndyce and Jarndyce in Dickens. It's going on forever. And I think one of the reasons it's going on forever is they want to try and bleed me of money.
what's this guy's name again?
David Paisley.
David. Well, let me try to see if I can help. If he's going to just use comments against you, Thomas Dave Frank, whatever his name, Paisley. He's a great guy. He's even an actor.
Yeah,
He's
there you
working.
go. I'll have that
He's
in.
working. People like him. And don't you agree, Graham?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
no, he's not a good person.
I don't. Did I say that?
No, I guess you didn't.
Okay, all right.
You said he was a great guy. I don't know if he is.
Oh, is he? Okay, he's a
But
guy.
like,
He's a guy. He's a guy.
yeah, but like it's not. The point is they're not going to. They can't win. The point is just to try and wind. To another thing they're trying to do. I really believe this is they're trying to make my subscribers and the people who support me. They're trying to make them sick of me because I'm constantly having to ask for money. So I'm hoping that now I move to America, this will stop happening. You know, I'm on trial at the start of September.
Oh, you weren't considered a flight risk?
August. No, I wasn't. They said as long as I don't mention the name of the person who's brought the case against me. But I have to go and actually I have to go back to London and actually stand trial for dealing with a situation the only way one could. And you know, it just never ends. It just never ends. I have a weird feeling that if David Paisley, when he finally backs off, I just think someone else is going to take his place. Because I think there might be someone out there who's just saying, let's just make sure Graham Linehan never, you know, raises any money for himself or has any rest, you know. So yeah, that was another reason why I moved over here. Sorry, you didn't.
How do you deal with that stress, Graham? Do you have any tips or tricks?
Unfortunately, all I've been able to do really is take SSRIs, which I don't like, and
Do they inhibit your brilliant mind from making all the
no,
connections
actually,
that needs?
no, there's no problem there. I've been writing as well as I used to. I just don't like the feeling of artificially feeling no anxiety. You know, I did realize though, one of the good things about them is I did realize that my whole life, when I started taking them, I realized that my whole life I'd been dealing with anxiety, like really bad anxiety, you know. And when I took them, I suddenly had this feeling of, oh wow, I don't actually have to feel like that. You know, I would remember things I'd done when I was a teenager that I was ashamed of, and they'd be playing in my mind and be able to sleep. But now it's just, it's the past. He wasn't, you know, you were just a stupid kid. You know, it allows me to get that distance, but it's also a kind of dampening of the joyful stuff, you know.
Are you able to use that as an opportunity to retrain yourself, or are you supplementing that supplement with philosophical exercises?
Oh, I'm just trying to get more exercise. I think that's always a good idea. You know, I think if you exercise every so often, you feel great for the whole day. And I just need to get that into my head that I will feel good afterwards. It just takes me ages to get there. But yeah, I'm kind of taking a little bit more better care of myself and stuff like that. But I would say to people, if you do need to go on SSRIs, just remember that you don't have to. I mean, I'm going to give them up when this trial is over. I'm going to just try and come off them again. I've tried to come off them about God knows how many times, about 12 times over the last 8 years. But every time I do, something else comes at me that I have to deal with. And I just keep having to say, I'll do it. I'll stop taking them after this. I'll stop taking them after this, you know. So
Yeah.
it's tough.
You know, Nina tried to get off of Prozac.
Oh, yeah.
And she kept stepping her dosage down until it was
Yes, that's what I do.
the point where everything just came right back, and she had to go back to her normal dosage.
Well,
I don't know. Prozac, I guess, is different. That's an depressant.
Yeah.
Not a,
it's the same family, though. I think it's the same family. And venlafaxine is supposed to be the best, but I don't particularly, Yeah, I don't get on with them. I actually went through a nice period of microdosing, and that was actually very helpful. I did that while
What,
I was finishing my book, and
LSD, or are we talking the SSRIs?
no, mushrooms,
Oh,
mushrooms.
yeah, yeah.
You
Okay.
know, and
Hmm.
that just kind of helped me. That really helped me gain a lot of perspective,
Hmm.
and I felt a lot better about things after that. But when you take the SSRIs, you can't do it because they block the
Yeah. It's the same
receptors.
receptors.
So
Yeah.
I would have to come off to be able to do it and get this lovely insight.
Hmm.
But now at the moment there's no. I just need to get through the next 2 months,
Hmm.
and once I do that, I think I can come off them.
Well, you and Nina are a couple of the most creative people that I've come across in my internet journeys. And it is interesting. It's always kind of a there's college courses, like beginning college courses, the connection between madness and creativity. But
Hmm.
the being open and active in the world comes with so many different stimuli. Anxiety and depression are among just the broader stimuli that a mind that is engaging creatively with culture and reality and the human experience is just going to have to bear. It's kind of like the cross, that it's the trade-off,
I
maybe.
think it might make me feel a bit more empathetic to people because when you take SSRIs, they really calm you down and you get to see life in a very
Hmm.
objective way. So when you see people who are doing terrible things or saying terrible things, it's a little bit easier to sometimes stop and say, but why don't you care about this? Why are you ignoring everything I'm saying? Why are you so angry? And that stuff has become more interesting to me uh, than reacting angrily. Although I still react angrily, of course.
Well, we all have our personas we need to keep up, maintain
Exactly.
for the public good. So where can people find your works, and where are they going to find when they get there? Substacks, podcasts?
Corey, you go first.
You can find me, well, first of all, I guess the main thing I do is the Heterodorx podcast, which you can, I would search for that, or Substack, I guess, Heterodorx, Heterodox Dorks. I also write at corinnacohn.substack.com. The funny thing about a name is it's really hard to change after you've spent years and years and years using it. Um,
Yes.
I think that's it. Yeah, you can find me on the Twitters too.
Anything
Yep.
coming up for you, Corey?
Well, I got this, of course, this conference here in Genspect, but I really want to do more writing around my conversion because
Mm.
I think that there's a lot of gaps to fill in that will start to become clear as I go through this journey.
I'll have you back on so we can talk about that if you're ever open to it. I love the religious aspect of culture. I think it's kind of time to give that more space in our
Mm.
discourses.
It seems, you talked about, hey, what's the next cultural thing? I think people are starting to realize that all the identity stuff is just junk food, and that they need something that has a little bit more nutrition to it.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Amen.
very true.
Graham,
Yes,
do you have another autobiography coming out?
I'm working on something. It's not so much a biography as again, just a kind of, well, actually, it's kind of about the year since the book came out. So it's like I had the
Hmm.
memoir, which was a whole life, and now I've got this compressed year to write about. So yeah, I'm starting to work on that at the moment. Um, but online, I'm on Twitter at Glinner, which is, it might be hard to find me because I'm under some sort of shadow ban all the time.
Hmm.
And my Substack is the Glinner update, where I basically just write
Hmm.
any, mostly stuff about the gender
Hmm.
argument, because it's so endlessly fascinating, so
Yeah.
such a moment of craziness.
Your produced work is still in pre-production though, so there's
Yes,
nothing to
yes, and I
point people
can't
to
tell you what
yet.
it's about. I can't even
Yeah.
tell you the title because we've got such a good premise that if
Mm.
you heard the title, you would be immediately. But I'll tell you when we switch off, because I'd like to tell you, Benjamin, especially.
Oh, I can't wait. Well,
Oh,
let's
Is-
take
Oh,
that
sorry,
opportunity.
Corinne. You'll enjoy it too.
I just want to know, is Derek Paisley going to be in it?
No, David Paisley.
Oh,
Great guy.
Yeah,
Great guy.
no, creative differences. Great
Great
guy.
guy.
Oh, yeah,
Great
dang.
guy. Great guy. Well, let's sign off so we can talk about the awesome stuff off of
Yeah, sorry I have
in the
to be so
exclusive
secret.
part. Thank you guys very much for joining me, and I'll see you in Albuquerque in the end of September.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, there we go.